welcome to the latest episode of the PKF Perspective Podcast. My name is Courtney Charleston. I work in the marketing team here at PKF, and I'm joined today by Derrek Lush. He's a principal within our business advisory team and specialises in strategic and operational planning. Derrek, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you just explain to me, in your own words, what your role is within PKF?
Traditionally, people will explain it's strategy and transformation, but what that really means is I'm good at taking promising companies and turning them into dominators within their chosen market segment through a combination of military-style strategic planning, targeted digital investment, so right-sizing that digital investment, and then embedding the right frameworks and structures to get their operations really humming.
So Derrek, I can imagine you've worked with a lot of businesses. Why do strategic plans fail, and I guess what are the things that you see with why they are falling out?
I see most strategic plans fail not in the design but in the delivery. It's in that getting it into what actually needs to happen, and a lot of that is because businesses don't actually go all the way through the strategic planning. They spend so much time working out the mission statement, they work on the objectives and they get them, and sometimes they're very, very good and very solid. Yet they have a strategy planning session for X amount of time within the boardroom, they're running out of time, then they quickly race through the last pieces, which are often the most important. And the strategic plan becomes merely strategic objectives with a mission statement. And they haven't done the legwork to really get down to what are the things that need to happen tomorrow in the business to drive the objectives they're after when they're not in the room.
So I can imagine with these failures you've seen organisations fall into historical data and relying on that too heavily. What does that sort of play into that role?
I see that happen a lot, and in sessions that I've facilitated, you see that placed on the table a lot is all of the data from the previous year and all the assumptions are based on the reality of the previous year, and the forecasting becomes the strategy. They take last year's results, we add a few percent, we drag it out another 12 months. And it's generally because it's easy and that data exists and no one likes to be wrong, and no one likes to put themselves out there. It's a proverb from a Greek philosopher: no man ever jumps into the same river twice, because the river is no longer the same river and he's no longer the same man. It's sort of saying that, well, the water in the river is different. Things have happened to the person that make them a different person. So jumping into next year's planning cycle in that way is fraught with danger, because the market is different, your competitors are different, your customers are different, technology is different, all these disruptors have changed. And if you're modelling next year's results based on last year's assumptions, you could well be flawed. And a lot of those assumptions they're implicit, they're untested, and quite often they're outdated. So it's about bringing new information to the strategic planning to make sure that you're in a position to start testing those assumptions.
Yeah, great. So an organisation, say for instance, if they've gone into that strategic planning outlook now, what I guess is the timeline for revisiting and making sure that their plan aligns with actually what is happening with the reality? The
timelines, and it's not a cop-out, it depends. But it does depend, because your strategy needs to be relevant, it needs to be current, and it needs to be realistic. And that depends on what environment you operate in. If you're operating in a fast-paced operating environment, you might have to revisit your strategy far more frequently than someone that's in one that moves at glacial pace. An annual strategy might be fine, it might be every 2 years, it might be every 3 years. What we see and support that works is extending your planning horizon beyond the 12 months, rather than just doing your 12-month reporting cycle, because that's what reporting drives you towards, to that 3 years at a minimum. Push that planning horizon out by 3 years, and then building in an operational plan to execute on that strategy that is in 12 months, but it's always 12 months. So you need to review that at a minimum quarterly, or based on key milestones within your plan. If you're looking at extending into a new geography, well, there's no point having done that, so we'll revisit the strategy in January because we said we're going to do it every year. Well, no, that's a critical milestone. That's now changed the marketplace, it's changed the environment. Now it's time to revisit the strategy and the execution plan. Are we still right? Are the assumptions we made still correct? And replan it. Always have the strategy 3 years in front of you and the execution plan 12 months in front of you.
Yeah, great. Balancing sort of those short-term goals with the long-term vision of the business too. Yeah. Well, Derrek, it taught us a lot, I think, about what that strategic planning should look like for a business leader. I guess, what's your understanding and mindset shift? Like, how would you encourage business leaders to look at future planning and what that should look like for them?
I think the most important thing, it's a behavioural shift, it's a mindset shift as you suggested there, and it's focusing on being ready, not being right. And that's probably the biggest piece of advice I can give at the outset, is just focus on being ready, not being right. Because everything shifts, it's a very complex interplay of systems. You understand your piece, but there are things happening in adjacent sectors, in different geographies that you have no control over. And if you try and predict what's going to happen, chances are you'll be wrong. But if you are able to build the muscle to be able to react to change, and then start putting some feelers out there to be able to identify signals of that change, and then respond accordingly, then you're in a much better position to succeed.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like they say, failing to plan is planning to fail. So I think that's definitely your mantra here. But no, thank you, Derrek. I think that you've taught everyone a lot about what this looks like for professionals. And if anyone listening does have any questions for Derrek, please feel free to get in contact. And Derrek, thank you for joining us on the latest episode of the PKF Podcast.
Thank you very much.